welcome to the Technical Staff and Theatre Workers podcast. It's the podcast in which I talk to people who work backstage in the technical theatre industry about how they got in, their experiences, and any advice they can give to anyone getting in. This is episode 5 of season 4. A big thank you to everyone who's downloaded the show, everyone who's listening to the show. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know who's interested in theatre and those who aren't interested in theatre, because it might make them interested in theatre. Yes, thank you so much for all the downloads. It's been really good so far, so really enjoying it. And without further ado, let's get on to our next guest. I'm here with my guest at this time. If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell me what your current job title is.
My name's Garry Kilby, and I'm depping on the Book of Mormon at the moment for automation.
Excellent. And how did you get into theatre?
How did I get into theatre? I initially got into theatre via crewing, really. I loved it as a kid, came to see shows in town with my parents, as you do, and I can't remember what the first show was, but in terms of automation, I was crewing abroad, and I had fallen into a bit of a niche of rock and roll type gigs.
Right.
Because of the language barrier. And
Okay.
it was international where I was working, so therefore
Okay.
the language was English. So that's where I started,
Right.
rock and roll stuff. And when I came back to the UK, I went into crewing again because I couldn't get anything.
Yes.
And there was a shortage of operators, as there is now for automation. And the head of stage at the theatre I was at the time couldn't find anybody to operate. There was a little play that they were doing. They'd never done a play before with automation.
Right.
And they decided to automate it. I don't know why, almost out of the blue. And they couldn't find anybody, and they just said, do you want to give it a whirl? And there you go. So I sort of fell into it. You know?
As a lot of us did.
Yeah.
So, international, where were you?
I was
based?
living in Norway,
Norway.
so I was in Oslo. And, I'd been crewing in the UK, so I went over to Oslo, but I couldn't work in the theatres because the language obviously was Norwegian in the theatres.
Right.
And they were worried for a health and safety point of view that I wouldn't be able to understand a problem quick enough.
Right, yes,
Even
of course.
though, ironically, the Norwegian word for stop is stop. But anyway. But yeah, so that's what happened. So I struggled a bit for work, and that's why I ended up in a rock and roll venue, a bit like Wembley Arena.
Right.
Here.
Because
It's
rock and
international.
roll is an international
It's an international thing.
language, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of American crews, Brits,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of thing. Yeah,
So it's
European.
people coming in. It's almost like a receiving house,
That's
if you
it.
would. Yeah.
That's it.
So you didn't train? I mean,
No.
like formally train? You
No.
just...
No, not at all. Old school sort of learning on the job type affair. you know.
Excellent. So
Yeah.
you went to theatre as a child, and so what drove you into going into the theatre, into the arts? Was it just you finished school and went, I need a job, and then there was crewing, or did you go, I want to do that?
No, when I came to see the shows, I have to admit, I think like a lot of us are, if we really tell the truth, we're quite smitten by it at the time.
Yeah,
as
yeah.
a kid.
The magic.
Yeah. So I'd seen things. I was lucky. I went to see the original production of Oliver down at the Albury.
Oh, right.
So I saw that, and technically that set, was quite groundbreaking at the time, I think.
Yes.
And I remember being blown away by that as a young kid. But the first thing I saw was The Sound of Music at the Apollo Victoria.
Oh, right.
With Petula Clark in it, and I was 10. And I remember, because there'd been an Amdram version of it in my town.
Right.
So obviously I'd seen it Amdram, and then we went to see the Pro version. And I couldn't believe they actually had a full-size facade of the mansion, then a full-size staircase that came
Right, yeah,
down,
yeah.
and then a mountain,
Oh,
a
really?
real mountain that,
Yeah.
such as it is, that she was standing on the top of. And that was it, I think. So from there on in, I kind of thought, this is for me.
Yeah.
But then I digressed,
Into rock and roll.
into graphic design.
Oh, right, okay.
So that's
all right.
what happened. That's what happened. I went into graphic design for a couple of years. I trained as a graphic designer,
Yeah.
always knowing that I wanted to be in theatre.
Right.
Did 2 years of graphic design and went, I've got to leave and give it a whirl. So I moved down to London just to see if I could get involved, and here we are.
Excellent, excellent. So what, if you can remember, was your first paid job in theatre? Let's make two questions. What was your first paid job in theatre, if you can remember it? And what was your first show in the West End that you worked on?
I'm trying to think what my first paid job was. Because I did a production of Guys and Dolls, which was at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Right.
But I was semi-pro.
Right, okay.
So that would be the first thing that I was ever involved in.
Right, yeah.
But as I say, semi-pro. And then the first pro production, I'm trying to think what it was. I can't think.
Trying to bring up memories that you've probably not thought about in a long time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was in the era of things like, it was Calamity Jane was one of the first big things, and Sunset Boulevard was another one when it was on at the Adelphi.
The Adelphi.
I was involved in. So it'd be that era.
That is sort of late 80s era. Excellent. So in your vast career that you've had within theatre and indeed rock and roll, have you ever come across anybody or anything in the industry that's held you back or prevented you from getting jobs or anything like that? Naming no names, obviously.
No, exactly.
But have you ever found that there's people like that who would stop you from getting...
I think politically one has had to be careful from time to time, maybe like most of us have.
Yeah.
I think there is a time to play the game and a time perhaps not. I think...
That's an interesting thing to say, actually, is there's time to play the game and there's time to not play the game.
Yeah.
Because there is definitely a game that's played.
Yeah, I think there is. Also, when, we get into tech and all those kind of things, everybody's tired.
Yes.
Everybody's been in for hours on end. Fuses potentially can be a bit short, and I think that's the time when we all have to realise that we have to get through that.
Yes, especially in those days, because we've talked about this before on the podcast, is that back, 15, 20 years ago, even maybe 10 years ago, and further, tech periods were you worked until it was done.
Yeah.
You didn't stop.
Yeah.
There was no, right, okay, we've done 4 hours, we'll have a break. You did it till it was done. Now I think it's much better because it's a lot more regimented. You have to be given breaks. You have to be given enough time.
Yeah.
When you leave at night, you can't leave at 10:30 at night and come back in at 9 o'clock the following morning. You're not allowed.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a way that it's progressed quite a lot.
Yeah, I think it's way more healthy.
Because it used to be every hour that you were in the theatre. And also what a lot of people don't realise is that because you're in a theatre, there's no natural light. No. It's essentially like working underground.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. Yeah.
And in several theatres, you are underground because the auditorium is below street level.
Yeah. So
you're getting no natural light and you're working for 15, 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
So,
it is a full-on thing, and I think that's a good example, is it not, of when one should check oneself from time to time.
Yes.
Because we're all in the same boat when it comes to that. Everybody's tired, everybody's, trying. But I think, for the most part, I've been quite lucky. I think most of the things I've worked on, everybody has been pushing towards the same goal. It's not been too them and us or whatever.
Yeah.
If there's been negotiation between departments, for example, generally I would say people, certainly now I think, are more open to discussion on how things can get resolved if there is something, so I don't know, say we need the floor up for an automation point of view and it's going to be in the way of sound or, LX, then, a negotiation generally can sort it, can't it?
Absolutely.
Rather than people screaming at each other, which perhaps used to happen.
Which is what used to happen, absolutely. And nobody ever budged either.
No.
It was, we have this time, this is our time, you can't have it. But nowadays there seems to be a lot more
I think it's
working together, pulling for the same way, for the same thing.
Yeah.
Excellent. What would you say are the pros and cons of working in this industry?
Cons are definitely part of what we just discussed, without question. It's the hours for me. It's always the hours, isn't it? It's they are what they are. It's what you sign up for, isn't it? And as we said, there are times when it's a lot, and there are times when It's great, and you find that you come in and you do virtually nothing, for the same,
well,
pay, whatever.
Yeah, as it's as we've said many times before as well, it's a lifestyle rather than a job.
Yeah,
and it's a lifestyle that you sign up for.
Yeah,
and you have to understand it's a lifestyle rather than a job.
I think so. Let's face it. If you're coming into this game to make money, then you can do nicely out of it. But that's not what it's about, is it? You're
never going to be a millionaire being a techie in a theatre.
You're not, are you? But it is a lifestyle. I think it's a great lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's a great thing to be involved in. It's something pretty unique. And it is fun. Let's face it. It is.
It's fantastic.
It is.
Great.
It's a great thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, we are. Doing the show this afternoon. You got 1,200 people, and they're all laughing their heads off, and they're all having a great time, and they forget about their lives for a couple of hours, which is what we do. That's what we're trying to achieve. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
What would you say is a common misconception of anybody trying to get in the industry? So when somebody new comes into the industry, what do they think it is that it's not?
I think this thing of it being a closed shop is a valid point, but coming from someone who didn't formally train and who had to buck the system, if you like, for want of a better phrase, it's definitely possible to get into it if you really want to do it.
Yeah.
But I think like you've said, it's a choice. It's something that you've really got to want to do.
Explain a closed shop.
Basically meaning that if you're not in it, you're never going to get in it.
Right, okay. So because everybody knows everybody, so everybody just gives their mates jobs, and you if you're not in that circle, then you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think with this game, I reckon that if you're prepared to put in the effort, I really do think it's possible to get in and get on. I really do.
Yeah.
And right back to even an old school approach, I still believe, I think maybe you'll disagree, but I still believe that if you are to write a letter with a CV, and I think the most important thing is find out the HOD's name. Which is really important. But if you rock up at stage doors and if you by hand deliver old school letters and CVs, but as long as you've found out who the HOD is, I reckon, if you're keen enough, I think that's enough to get you in if the timing's right.
Yes.
If somebody's looking for a dep or, looking to train someone up and the timing is right, I certainly would meet with the person and have a chat anyway.
Yeah.
And see, and I still believe it's possible. I don't know whether you agree. But,
no, absolutely. It actually leads on to my last question, which is, what advice could you give to somebody who's trying to get in?
I think
which
that's
is just
it.
that.
Yeah, it is that. But you've got to be committed. I think it is a
we
cliche.
should all be committed, to be honest.
Well,
yeah.
You're right.
Be a sponge as well. If you do get in the door, be a sponge. Learn. You don't know everything. Nobody knows everything.
Yeah.
So learn.
And maybe if say your interest is sound or automation, whatever it may be. If somebody is offering you a chance to have an evening on a sound desk, an evening on an automation desk, I don't know, with the DSM, whatever it is, take it.
Yeah,
I reckon, just
absolutely.
Even if you're not particularly interested, feign interest. Just go and sit on the desk and see what it's like from their perspective. And I think that helps you deal with things that you have to deal with in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
From other people's perspective.
You have an idea of what other people have to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it does help. But I mean, if you're not committed, forget it, because there's plenty of other people that are. I think that's the thing. If you're not, what is it? If you're not twice as committed, somebody else will be. Whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Lovely. And that's all I've got. So thank you very much for joining me.
No problem. You're welcome.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Hey, big thank you to Garry for that one. He's been around a while, Garry. He was a performer before he turned to the technical side, so I'm informed. So, it was great to talk to him about that. Thank you so much for listening to this. Thank you so much for downloading it. It's been really great, really loving it so far, and long may it continue. Thank you to all the guests that have been on, and I shall see you all next week.